What's up, everybody? I'm Blake from Audiotree. I'm here with Rick from Audiotree, who is our head sound engineer, the dude who's been doing the session since the very beginning. And we're just doing a Q&A. So anybody in the chat, go ahead and ask questions. We'd love to address them. And then I will have some for Rick as well to sort of fill the time. It's also happy hour right now. So I have a beer right here. So does Robin Schultz Barrow, apparently. And Rickolas, what are you drinking, Rick?
I have vodka and black cherry soda.
Yes.
To whip something up. And I also do have like a High Life, because that's what we distribute to everybody that comes on the show. You know,
of course. Gotta have a High Life.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few left.
Just first one, Rick, from Mackie Ibanez. How loud do you set the amps, or does it matter?
Well, I'm assuming like bass and guitar amps and stuff like that. We let them be like a jam level. So in the room, everything is kind of balanced as a whole in the room. So like nothing's muted down or turned down or padded down, whatever you want to call it. You know, like have stuff in front of it to block the sound.
Yeah,
just like make it be well balanced in the room so that the room sound is useful for the final for that mix, you know.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, some bands come in my experience, and they are sort of worried about turning it up way too loud. Why? Or like, you usually say, go ahead and run it as loud as you want. What's the sort of advantage to that over having them dial it way back? Just getting their better tone, or like a truer tone for them?
Well, I think everything in this whole production stems from inspiring the artists to like feel comfortable, you know, and
Sure.
whatever that takes. So if an artist is like, hey, I only feel good like having my amp cranked and feeding back and uncontrolled, then go for it, because there's just nothing that we can't handle as far as figuring out whether it's an EQ or some way of like riding a fader enough or whatever, or other things on the mix to balance it out, you know, because that's like the number one key to this whole thing from day one was comfort, you know, artist comfort, and getting them to be like, wow, this is like so comfortable is the thing that like creates the end of all things in production, which is like a performance that is, you know, self-inspired by an artist, musician, group, whatever.
Yeah, I like that. Like giving them the chance to be as authentic as they can be in our space, versus like a lot of artists do come in and say to us something along the lines of like, you know, we're pretty loud, so I hope you're okay with that. Most people tell us to dial it down, but you're way more in the world of just saying, you know, just play your loud ass music, and then we'll figure out how to make it sound good.
Right. We're not going to limit you. If you want recommendations, I say always when we're setting up is like, don't be afraid to turn your stuff up to get your sounds. The normal mode is to balance out in the room. So if the drums are at this volume, bass should be like, you know, comparable to that in a balanced situation. The guitars, you know, need to be up. Like, so if you're hearing from across the room drums and bass or next to you or whatever, turn your amp up so that it feels like, hey, I can hear my amp and it's right with those people, you know, and don't worry about anything else in that, because the vocals are going to be really isolated by the time we take care of, you know, the EQs and all that stuff, you know.
For sure.
Right.
For sure. Merdnim asks, what's your favorite session and why?
Oh, maybe. You know, I mean, that's
you don't want to help anyone.
That's such a bullet to like throw, you know. It's like, what do you think is your favorite session? It happens day by day.
Who's your favorite child?
You know what I mean? Like, I think every band that's come in is just, you know, left an impression on myself and everybody in our company, you know. And I mean, what's my favorites? It's so hard to pull from favorite world, you know. You probably know more than I do about what my favorite, you know, because I probably talk about it more.
I would say you tend to like more open sounding, like slightly more acoustic, usually lead singer being a woman kind of bands.
Yeah, like, I mean, Myrna was awesome, right? Recently, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I got it. You know, even like in the roll up to this, you had the what was the
Great
band?
Time.
Yeah, I mean, all these, I just like things that are like blow my mind. Like the math doesn't add up when you meet people, and then they just
Like slay it.
just blow your mind on a session, and you walk away going like, wow, I had no idea this even existed. You know, I mean, that happened when we did Fox a long, long, long time ago. You know, it was just like, whoa.
Dude, yeah,
So.
Fox was an amazing one. Mackie Ibanez again, do the vocal mics go direct to headphones, and are the headphone mix set individually? Oh, this person wants technical information. I love it. Oh, Rick might be frozen. So in the meantime of frozen Rick, Carton, get out of here. Carton 17, want to become famous? We're not adding viewers. Murder asks who's your favorite host and why? Pick wisely. That's an amazing question. Jeremy Ross says, oh man, the first time Fortunate Youth played Audiotree, the sound y'all got was better than their studio work. What magic was that? We've lost Rick, but hopefully that's just because the internet in the studio is bad and he can log back in. So yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna play a song inspired by the love of that event.
When you come on down, can't you come on down? I said, my town. Oh, mama, when you come on round, won't you come on round? I said, I'm around. Oh, baby, when you walk this way, when you talk this way, you drive me crazy. Oh, mama, when you walk this way, when you talk this way, you make me lazy.
Okay, so back to hopefully Undie Tan is still in it, but any tips on recording vocals with loud drums in the room?
Oh, okay. So the question is, how do you record vocals with loud drums in the room?
Correct.
Yeah. Uh, every day.
No, not
I know.
how many.
I know. Okay, so the process is really simple. Okay, drums make sounds, and drums have frequencies that are really loud, and vocals make other frequencies that are not exactly in the same spot as the drums in the frequency spectrum. And so what you basically do is you like notch out all the drum frequencies that are basically annoying or loud in the vocal mics, and then you're left with like just pretty much the vocals in the vocal mics. If you get rid of the shit that you don't need or is bothering you, it'll reveal that the stuff that, or I don't know if it's called revealing, but it's like basically that. I
What
expect.
about what about bleeding though?
Well, I
Does
mean, okay, so the bleed of on a vocal mic from drums or any other instrument, again, has like certain frequencies that'll be louder than others. And
okay?
so let's say if there's the way we approach it every day is like, all right, you pull up a vocal mic, you say, look, this is like annoying on this vocal mic that's in the background, which would be the bleed, right? So you do your vocal EQs, but then you do additional EQs on those vocal mics to get the bleed to sound great. You make the bleed sound great, and the bleed's useful, and that's what like studio's been doing for I don't know 100 years, right?
Yeah.
Not to be weird or anything, but that's like how
No,
they
no.
used to do records,
Yeah.
so
Cool. Hell yeah. Lane Patrol, do you have favorite mics for recording acoustic strings like upright bass, cellos, etc.?
acoustic streams, I think all anything that has to do with like it has an acoustic output on it, we like to mic. And so use the best mics you would use in the studio if you were doing an album project for it is what we do. And then the same technique applies where you just get rid of like the frequencies that are annoying on them, and you just notch out things like that's like a thing that mastering engineers do a lot in life. It's like they'll find a frequency that seems to be like annoying to their ears or whatever, and they'll find it, and they'll either tone it down or dip it down or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's what we do on all those mics, and for some reason when you like we do it through all the sources, then it comes out to being like, hey, look, it sounds like an album and it works.
Yeah, and that's that same like you can get that roomier tone in it, right?
Right, yeah, you want like a room is half the sound, in ours,
Yeah.
at least in our production. So
Yeah, I wish we could walk in there. We'll do a second one and we can walk in and take people around in there. But you guys built like a bunch of different walls, right? For people that don't know, like as you watch the sessions evolve over time, the walls change, and that's because you were trying to like basically make it sound better in there. But what are a few things that you were thinking when you built the rock wall, when you built the like squish wall, and when you built the wood wall? Like why those specific things?
so in the studio, like it was, yeah, like it was built originally to be like really dead. Had like a full on 4-foot ceiling of like hung insulation panels and stuff. All the walls were treated dead and stuff like that. And it was like you walk in there and you feel like the sound was getting sucked out of your brain. So
Yeah.
when we moved in there, somebody had gone in there and built a booth and ripped out a lot of the ceiling stuff, and it was kind of like half live, half like bouncy, like there were like slaps and stuff, weird shit. So when myself and all the other people that have been here would kind of hypothetically complain about like, man, this room just is whatever and stuff. So with over the years we pulled this stuff out. We made the stone wall. The stone wall is like a mid to high frequency diffuser, and
Okay.
that's what that's for. And it's because it's stone and it's not coated or glazed or anything, it doesn't reflect like a piece of glass. It diffuses the highs and the mids. And then there's on the opposing wall there's a really big diffuser wall there, and that's to get like the mids and low mids all diffused and stuff
Sure.
like that. We still have a big bass trap in the ceiling above, where a lot of times they put like the 3-piece group up there where you see all the black crushed velvet. And so that's like with a curtain, even you can pull that across and turn that into an isolation booth, and it'll be dead as all hell. And then with the wood diffuser, it was originally it was intended because we needed to diffuse that wall a little bit because it was parallel to a very few little bit of surface on the front area and stuff like that when we got rid of the amp cabinets and stuff. So we did that, but when I was like thinking about it with everybody, we were like, I wanted it to be something that I could want to look at, stare at, and so we made it a piece of art, basically, just to like, because looking through the control room glass every single day, that back wall there was just the ugliest thing ever, and you can see that in videos like from 4 or 5 years ago, where it's like it looks like my first like wall, you know, in a house or something. Like I don't know how to build any of this stuff, and we just had to live with it for so long, you know.
I love it. I love it. Okay, a couple other questions for you, Richolas. You feeling good? Maybe take another swig? Or...
Oh no, I'm ready. We could do this for a couple more days.
Humberto Morales Valdavino says, "What is your signal chain for recording?"
Well, signal chain for recording. Let's say microphones of choice, based on years of experience. So we're not afraid to use anything in any situation. It could be tube condensers down to, you know, dynamics and stuff like that. Those go into the mic lines. Mic lines hit depending on what we're recording. A lot of times we use mostly Neve mic pre's. Classic Neves, you know, they're all designed from the 1073, 1084 series of the 1272 mic pre. And basically that then will go into the SSL board as a thing where we can decide if we're going to use onboard EQ on the SSL and the compression and, you know, the dynamics of the SSL. Do some inserting into the channel strips of like outboard compressors and EQs, whatever, you know, like to be specific, you know, Chandler stuff is very favorable in our world. We do have like API and Teletronic stuff like LA2As and all that stuff. We use all this stuff, modern, old, whatever, and then that runs into Pro Tools. And the Pro Tools is pretty set up simply as a tape machine recorder. You know, every track is discrete. We put like EQs on there. In the Pro Tools is where I'll do like all the notch EQ on anything that like I can't stand. Like, hey, there's a sound on this guitar, a sound on these drums, like a little buzzy, whatever, vocal stuff. We do all that in the Pro Tools. Pro Tools comes back into the SSL. The SSL has a full mix going across behind me from fader 1 to whatever it takes to get the session populated. We do a live mix on that board. There are echo sends and reverb sends, delay sends, all that stuff. And that's how we, you know, like put all the effects to make it sound like a full mix. From the board, it goes back into the Pro Tools. In the Pro Tools, it gets mastered through mastering software. And right now we're using just a real simple like brick wall limiter to finish the mix and stuff like that. And it's all done in real time.
Hell yeah, man, nice.
Sorry.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what else to say.
17 minutes later.
Yeah, except hell yeah. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Oh, Gerzegors Claby says, do you use drum samples in far out sessions? I know the answer to that is no.
No.
And then again, from Humberto Morales, do you use EQ or compression while recording?
Yes. Well, all the Audiotree live sessions, all live from Lincoln Hall and shows from Schuba, we definitely do that's all full on like mixing, you know, EQs, compression, effects, everything hands on, done live. There's no coming back to it. Like, for the most part, I mean, like Greta Van Fleet at Live from Lincoln Hall, that's done live. Sunlux, all those things were like live mixes. Everything that we've ever done is a live mix, and unless there's a disaster where we might have to like appease something or a contractual appeasement, you know, it's 1,000% done in real time with the band for that purpose. So they only get a chance to do it live once, and we that's the standard, you know.
Yeah, for Mackie,
that's the challenge.
If there's any post-processing, like cleaning up tracks, and the answer is basically no. I mean, they will do some like you'll do fader stuff after the fact. You'll listen back to it and like go ahead and lift stuff up and down, but there's no like auto tuning. There's no extra processing going on in any of it. Whatever sound was recorded was the sound recorded.
Right. Like 1 out of 20 sessions, I'll do something stupid. I'll be distracted
Yeah.
and I'll blow like, oh, look, there's a guy or a person or whoever over there singing a lead vocal part and did not even expect that for some reason. And then so I'll go in and I'll go after the whole thing's done, I'll be like, I'll go and fix that one line that I missed or 3 words on it, because it happened. I was like, oh shoot, and so I don't want our final product to not have like huge character flaws that people will troll on.
Basically, if it's your responsibility, like if you messed it up, then you'll fix it. But if it's having whatever, and we've had the rarest of cases where, like, I remember during the cloakroom session, like a dude's bass just went out for the last song, so we just had him rerun that. But that's all. Like, that's all it's ever done. If people miss notes or whatever, that's not what happened.
Out of 1,200 sessions, right? We've had 3 bass punches that accumulated over time of like 30 seconds of life.
Yeah, exactly. Tiniest flips. But Dimitri Wolf just says, how did you make Chan's snare sound so beautiful?
I think that was Chan making Chan's snare beautiful, because I mean, my stuff is like, look, if I don't have to do anything, I don't do anything. If I have to do something, I do it. It's like so like when people present you with amazing like performance and sounds, you just sit back and you're like, you get overwhelmed. You're like, wow, this is amazing. This is all like, I can't believe this happened. You tear up, all that happens, and every day when that happens, I just can't believe it, and then I'm like, why do I get to do this, And I mean, I just say that, it's like, but yeah, if I have to work my ass off, I will, but I'm very good at recognizing when the source is better than not, and that's, I think, probably 99% of the battle of being decent or good at something.
You've said so many times, like, the less you have to do, the better. Like, if the band just comes in and they're already ready, like, you don't want to mess them up, make them into something. Like, if you leave it alone and they just play the way they play. I mean, especially a band like John at the time. I don't know if they use pedals now, but at the time they weren't really using any pedals except a tuner and maybe a distortion or something. It was just all clean. So yeah, totally. Tyler Ducarme, how many engineers work on a single session? Oh,
well, that's a good question. So the story goes is that I need a lot of people in life to help me, or our production's like kind of a big production. I mean, we usually have 4 to 5 people in the studio, that being like, 4 videographers, a host, and then on the audio side, it's usually myself and somebody helping me, like either an intern or an assistant or another engineer. They're all in different phases of life. So, most of the people that are working with me have gone through either a lifetime of learning, or they're new at it and they've gone through interning up to now they are, good at help. But I guess the answer to the simplified form is there's usually 2 of us there. It's like somebody to help us load in, set up, and then run some faders, because it's like, yes, I've done plenty of sessions by myself. I don't prefer it. I prefer to have help. And so usually me and somebody else is sitting at the board, and I prefer somebody else to get some enjoyment out of it than just me being a mano-a-mano kind of person. It's just funner to hang out with somebody.
Totally. And then you can teach them while also learning, which is
exactly. You learn from anybody that you interact with in life. So
exactly. Yeah. Nathan Booker Kane is watching. He says, Rick, and then he also says, Hey, and then Steve, our boy Steven Falco, shout out.
Steve not Steve.
Interviews, check him out on Audiotree Live. Go to our YouTube, watch Steve, hit some people up.
Just so that's Steve N.
Yeah, Steve N. Austin Isaac Peters asked, what is your least favorite frequency?
Oh God. Well, here you go. Least favorite frequency at this point in life is probably 2.5 kilohertz. It's the shit on guitar tones that everybody has. It's just a guitar amp sound frequency that's just undesirable all across the board.
What is it? Can you do a vocal impression of it, or like what does it sound like? Like why do you hate it so much?
I can't make an impression of it, but if you were to take a guitar source and just like find that frequency and make a tight little cue of it, just that isolate that frequency and turn it up and down, you would just experience why you don't like to listen to chainsaws 3 inches from your ear,
I thought you were going to say chain smokers, which I also agree. I do not like to listen to them 2 inches from my ear, but chainsaws, yeah, that's all the same. Oh, Nathan agrees.
Yeah, worst favorite frequency.
TikTokto asks, how long does setup take for your live sessions? Oh, I can answer that, but yeah.
So all right, this depends on the band. We have like a protocol of like saying an hour for the setup if it's 4 or 5 or under. If it goes to 6 people in the band, we tend to add another 15 minutes per member, or sometimes a half hour if they're like, if you look at their backline or whatever, what is it called? Their damn tech thing. You know what I'm talking about with all their advanced and stuff. They have like 25 keyboards, 17 guitars, and 6
only done 800 of these, and you don't know it's called an advance.
Right. Well, I mean, it's been 2 months. I mean, I'm rusty and old now.
Yeah, but basically 2 hours, and then occasionally longer or shorter. Especially with single performance, we'll do an hour or an hour and a half to give them that.
Yeah, and then, like I said, it's just so that everybody has. It's not like with that through it and get it set up. We just want to give everybody the opportunity. The math is added to if we do that this way, then everybody has a fair chance at being comfortable.
Sure. Yeah. Gustavo asks another question. How do you deal with phase issues, especially drums, because you make them sound really clean? Which you kind of answered, but I'd be curious with specifically the phasing aspect of it.
All right. So the way this whole thing works is that I believe in a core concept of absolute phase and stuff like that. So absolute phase is something that, not to name drop, but Bob Ludwig taught me about about like 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. Geez, who knows? But absolute phase means that you want everything, all your sources to be coming either from the speakers or away from the speakers. Like the frequencies originate their attacks and their waveforms, either pushing the speakers out or pulling the speakers in, let's say, and stuff like that. So every time I work with a new engineer in this situation, they always go like, why do you have all the phase buttons on the drums in, except for I don't do the kick drum? And I explain it to them, and then they're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I go, basically for drums, what happens is a drummer raises a stick and hits a snare drum, let's say, or a tom or whatever it is and stuff. And the mics are on top of those sources, right? They're pointing towards those sources. So when you hit the initial snare drum, which way does the head go? Does it go up or down from the one that gets hit? It gets pushed down, and that's the microphone's pointing at it. So the microphone sees and it shows up on a waveform. If you look at the waveform, as initial waveform going away from the microphone. So, and everything else like normally would go towards the microphone. You play a guitar, it pushes the speaker towards it. Bass pushes the speaker toward it. All these sources do this, and at a distance, like vocal mics and stuff like that, it's really irrelevant because it's bounced around the room a million times.
Sure.
Initial impacts are like on things that the mics see them as going away. Well, the gist of the whole reason is that like most tracking sessions, every tracking session I look at, all the sources will be like, oh, look at this. The snare drum's initial wave is going down, but the bass and the guitars are going up. And when you build a mix off of that, you're trying to force the speakers to go 2 different directions at the exact same time when those attacks are hit. And that's just bad, and so that's like the number one problem with live mixing in a studio is that phase is going in 2 different directions. You're already trying to cancel out energy on your speakers and plus in your mix, That makes sense?
Yeah.
Simple form.
Nice.
Answered the question?
Yeah, absolutely. Melissa M. Adams Melissa Madams says, what's going on in the AT studio at this time? Well, I can kind of answer that. Nothing, but Rick is doing what?
Rick is like literally. I've gone through the entire console and recapped, it's like just fixed every feature that wasn't necessarily working, including getting the recall working, which was something that used to work when we first bought the board, and by the time we got it here, it didn't work for not decades. I mean years now, 2 years and stuff. So it's like a problem moment. As of last Friday, I got to the 48th channel working. And so I have 48 fully working channels,
Hell
and
yeah.
the computers within the computers are working.
Hell
And
yeah.
and so that's what I've been doing, and I've been like helping out with the other studios in the building, getting all their stuff straightened out. We're remodeling their our lounge kitchen area and stuff. So I've just been in isolation here by myself, working on things, prepping things, and making sure that when we do uh, get back into full production, that everything is super, super awesome for everybody.
Yeah, which will hopefully be sooner rather than later, man.
Yeah.
All right. Peter asks, are you gating drums, clipping, or compressing them because they sound very open? A lot of people have drum questions, clearly.
Yeah. It's like drums are the hardest thing to deal with when there's more than one person in a room. Like recording drums in a room is a challenge upon itself. And then
Sure.
when you add like 2 people or 3 people or 4 people or 6 people in the room with all those mics and stuff. I mean, let's say you have 40 mics in the room and you're not just recording drums, which is also a thing that people do. They like, hey, I'm gonna put my entire mic collection, everything I've ever done in my life, on the
On
drum. And
drums.
well, I mean, so like the answer to that is just basically I don't even know. It's like um I mean to say like I don't
Did,
have a great answer, but like, it's like
did you forget the question, Rick? I
of
can ask.
course I did. I was riffing. And I did finish my drink. So
Yeah. Open up your high life. I already opened up my PBR, so we're
all
good
right,
to go.
so repeat the question real quick and I'll answer it because I got
Yeah.
there and I fell off the cliff. Whoops.
You're good.
And now I'm foaming.
Just tell me if you forget. No shame. Peter asks, are you gating drums, clipping, compressing them? They sound very open.
I am not gating them because it just fails miserably to do that. It just really does. Like, because invariably it'll sound great for like when you're doing the sound check, and then somebody will like go to brushes or sorry, I got foam in my mouth. Go to brushes or play like the quietest side stick, and you'll be like, why is that all of a sudden? Why don't I hear anything
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
drummer? And it'll just be like, like some weird like ambient shit. So just know, like, you never have to do any gating or expanding if you just get rid of the frequencies and all those sources that make drums sound bad. You know what I mean? Like if you go through all the cymbal mics and all the drum mics and you find the frequencies that are annoying and shitty, once you clear all those out, that whole thing just opens up like the person was asking, and you don't have to like, it'll just sound like amazing, It's like you won't need gating, you won't need expanding because there will be no notes going like, whatever, a tom tom. Even when when we were setting up, there might be a drummer going like hitting a rack tom and they'd be like going, or a floor tom, and you're like, what the heck? Or a snare drum, ding, and like but you go find that frequency and you get rid of it, all of a sudden it's like, boom, and you're like, what? How can
Yeah.
you even do that? But that's the thing. It's like gating, but if you just get rid of the thing that's resonating, it goes away. Nobody even knows it's there anymore,
Yeah.
And you have to get rid of it on all the microphones. So if it's really bad,
Right.
and that's what we
Right.
do. So
If you had like 5 the options of 5 microphones that were good or 30 that like were below average, would you rather have more like worse ones or less that like recorded better? That I'm curious about like your perspective on something like that. Like, does the mic matter that much, or is it more about what you do with it?
I mean, there's so many arguments to everything. And like when you say like, uh, you know, uh, I would just say what I like to do is use the least amount of microphones to get the job done. Like
Hmm.
when I was learning how to engineer, and people around me would do things like, in our studios and in my peripheral or whatever. It would be like every engineer came in and be like, no, this is the way it has to be. This is like an amazing thing. And they do a great job with whatever they threw together, whatever they're used to and stuff like that.
Sure.
And that's how I would just like mimic things like that. Let's say when heard something like, wow, that was amazing. I didn't even know that kick drum worked so good, that mic and the kick drum or something, and I'd mimic it until I understood what it did and all this stuff. But what I would say to answer your question is like, I'm a minimalist on everything. It's like, look, if you can do something really good with one microphone, then and it stands up in a mix and it fits in a mix and all that stuff, that's what you should do, because you're always like going back and forth with this phase issue.
Sure.
Like I've worked with like just insanely talented producers and engineers in the world, and I just like sit there and go, hey, whatever you want, whatever you need, whatever you're used to. Just like when we talk to the bands and stuff, same thing. I'll be like, look, I will do whatever it takes to make you comfortable and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So if you need 6 mics on a guitar cabinet, let's do it. And somehow that's going to magically turn into a formula of like things like, look, this is real, and this is sound, I mean, that's just how it works. I just got to say, like, I've worked with so many people in the universe of all things from, all directions of the world and statures and stuff. And everybody has their, like, this is what I learned. This is how I do it. And this
Yeah.
is all I know,
Yeah.
and that's basically a fundamental of what you would you will do. If you were like an engineer producer person, you can't learn everything about everything in a minute, and so most of our questions always come from people that have been doing it for 5 years on average. Like they'll be
Sure.
like, I don't understand how this works, how do you do this? And I'd be like, well, after 35 years of doing it, thank God I can still hear,
Yeah.
A, and B, it's
For real.
like I've just learned that like the simplest path in everything in life is probably the easiest
Yeah.
and best path, unless like you get to point B and it's like, no, this is not how it works, like overcomplication is never one, it's like in my situation, maybe it's, part of my brain and stuff, but I've watched just people just suffer, when they go like, well, I have 5 mics or 5 sources on a guitar amp, and now I have to figure out how to mix this. And
Yeah.
they spend 2 hours trying to figure that out, I mean, we had a recent like far out that like I couldn't handle it. There was like 4 or 5 sources of on a guitar thing, and I just couldn't get the math together. Even if I brought it down to one thing, it didn't work. I couldn't figure
Yeah.
out why, and nobody could. And so that was it. It's
Yeah.
very once in a blue moon or once in a while that it happens, but I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I think
simple
that's
is
right.
easier.
The sort of rude answer is like play your guitar better, or like figure out how
Better
to like
source.
make your tone better.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think, but I mean, yeah, but that's
And we're
obviously
good
not.
at helping people with that if they need it. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, it's a
Sure.
rare instance, but somebody will come in and be like, yeah, I really wanted to use this amp that you have, but I don't understand it. And I'm like, all right, well, what are you looking for? And then we'll just sit there and like dial it in with them, and be like, hey, is this something oh yeah, wow. No, I didn't even know, and or whatever,
Yeah.
and like,
Oh,
or like I'll pull it up on a mic and I'll be like, ooh, okay. Can we come out there for 1 second and just like touch a few things just a
yeah.
little bit? And they were like, oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
you know but and
Yeah.
then just plow through it. And then again, the way the sessions work is we just like we get them in there, we super courteous, we do all these things, and and while that's happening, there's a huge current of like psychological meets technical stuff just floating around. Like I'm like constantly paying attention to, you see it all the time, like the way people are, if they're comfortable or if they're uncomfortable, if they're nervous, if they're like, hey, I'm having a lot of problems with this scenario or stuff. If there's interband issues and stuff, like I'll like step in and be like the class clown if it needs to be, right? Just different things like to adjust the psychology and keep it moving forward, because I know as soon as they actually realize and get that 1 second moment to hear what they sound like in their headphones or whatever in their monitoring, that's going to just relieve like days or weeks or months of like anxiety, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I get.
No, 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 no. I love
It's
it.
true. These are points that people don't understand, and
I
that's
know.
like,
I think the biggest thing that we have talked about for so long is that like the mentality of going into it with sort of like, the only word I can ever think of is customer service, which has a cheesy connotation. So maybe it's more like empathy or understanding, something like that. Just trying to meet them where they're at is really important. And I think you operate in a really specific and unique realm because you're a sound engineer who actually like gives a shit about them as people. And I think a lot of times what is the stereotype at the very least of sound engineers is that they're, I don't know, sort of like indifferent to you as a person. And you do a great job of approaching it with like, look, what matters most is that your needs are met, and then hopefully the sound will follow, and likely if your needs are met, psychological, spiritual, emotional, physical, then like what's left will be a great performance that we can record well and master well and all that shit. But
yeah, I'm a firm believer in that psychology is 99.9% of like a great performance.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
like from experience, since a child, it's like, look, if the conduit is there or to make me do something amazing, and my mind is focused on being amazing and stuff like that, as opposed to like, oh God, we got a flat tire in the van and it just got towed and I don't know where it
Yeah.
is. Or, all those things, whatever it takes, you know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
just like that. All those things, like you think about the universe of what can destroy a session. And then people constantly like, how is this even happening in our domain? And it's like, well, again, if you go get a psychology degree, and then you'll probably be a better engineer,
But that's what I feel every day. I just need a psychology degree, then I'd understand the
Right.
world, maybe just to understand why people make decisions.
Right. You'd
Oh,
understand if you can understand yourself, then get past that and accept who you are and all that stuff, then you can start like realizing that there's other people out there and they have
yes,
just as many or more needs than you in all domains. So
yes. I love it. Okay, we have 12 minutes. So anyone else that wants to ask questions, go ahead and start asking them. I have a few more for you, Rick, and then we'll close it out. Garrett Karp asks, most challenging Audiotree acts to record for audio reasons, not personality reasons. So maybe if you can't think of specifics, just like generals, what has been difficult for you with regards to sound? Or like, is it about too many inputs? Is it about like digital stuff and physical stuff? Is it about bands being too heavy or too light? What do you think?
That's a kind of a question where like, I think if you were asking me like what makes it hard in general,
Yeah.
what's the hardest or a hard session, I think it's when the hardest session is what everybody always asks the same question: how do you get vocals to sound good when there's a drummer in the room? So when the vocalist is singing at a volume where it's almost a whisper, and the drummer is not playing on par
Out
with
of
that
it.
performance, like, so like I just there it's amazing how you'll like people will pair those two things together. Like, I'm a drummer, and the only way I know how to make drums sound good is to
Loud.
pound the living shit out of them.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it just so happens that I'm paired with a singer that actually has their character, their voice, their tonality, or whatever, their timbre, all these things are based on super like intimate quietness, And so that is probably the thing that like just destroys me. But at the same time, I'm like, well, that's an insane challenge. And I just have to work that much harder on writing those vocals. So I just like literally stare. If the person's from behind, I watch their head, their breathing movements, their shoulder movements. Like, you see all these animations from a body of that to like give you the clues that like, hey, look, okay, so they're getting in so close. They're going to be so quiet. I got to raise a fader so that they can hear it. And then I'll just be like, look, I just have to manually, personally watch every gesture and try to minimize all the crap. So in the case of like, I don't know, there's like, I think it was Japanese, what was
Breakfast?
Japanese breakfast. Very quiet vocal, standing right next to the drummer that was playing kind of loud. and stuff like that. So it was incredibly tough, you know, like and also of course there were cymbals in that kit that just happened to have certain frequencies that ring a louder than other cymbals and stuff like that, which it just, you know, it's like there's such a huge challenge a lot of times when you get that, you know, and other times you just bring it up and you're like, wow, that, you know, this just everything works because the drummer plays to the dynamic of the vocalist, you know, surrounds
Right.
themselves in that
Right.
domain. And then you're like, hey, you know, it's like it's all the bands we get from Nashville, not to name any, but they're the bands are usually
Good.
like we're here to support the vocalist and we'll play with that dynamic, you know.
Yeah.
It's very rare that you'll get anybody in that domain from that will be like, look, I am the loudest drummer in the universe and so be it, you know, I can only play
Yeah.
it.
That's probably because a lot of them are gig musicians, so they're not like they're not a band in that it's all 5 people who grew up together and chose to be this band. It's like 2 people who are the band and the 3 that are hired guns. So it makes a lot more sense, especially because like Nashville's such a gig economy for performance, and a lot of people make their living off of like playing drums, you know, for
Right.
someone
Well, they're just their psychology has been opened up to like I'm part of a whole and not
else. Yeah,
you
exactly.
know.
Not the one who matters. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
that,
not that, but you know what I mean. It's like it's just like, look, I'm part of the whole group, and I have a role in this team of people, and
sure.
I'm not trying to make a like using this as my thing, and the other people can suffer whether or not, you know. But you
Well,
do
yeah.
get that, you know.
I meant like the one who matters in a capital O in a sort of matrix
Yeah.
sense, in like
Hey,
a
you're right. You're. I
important,
mean, you know it.
important person. Like clearly not. Okay, we are gonna close out. One last question from Roll. What Sirius SSL do you use in the studio?
We have a 4000 E/G that has every flavor that you can stick in it. It was just happened to be that way when we got it. So we have you know, the all different series like the orange EQs, the brown EQs, the blacks, and the 2 different versions, and the pinks and stuff. They're all in there. It's like just it's like the hey, you want the 80s to the, you know, the mid 80s to the late 80s SSL. It's all in there, and that's what it is. It's a 4000K E/G. It's happy.
Hell yeah. And then my last one would be from me to you. Do you have any advice for someone who wants to start out being a sound engineer?
Yeah, I mean, the way I always tell everybody when they ask me that question is I say, look, find the people or the group or the production team or whoever it is, the artist, the domain that really gets you excited about the whole reason of wanting to be in this domain, and seek them out 100%. Try there first. So if it's whatever style music, whatever production style music, whatever area of the world that you love the music coming from or whatever, go right to that source. Try to intern for them, try to integrate in them. Don't waste your time like spending years and years trying to be figure out then and bridging over to that. Just go right there. Just go right to the source, what makes you inspired, and then attach yourself to them as best as you can or however you can, and you'll just get to point B 1,000 times faster than 99.9% of the rest of the people that don't do that.
Hell yeah, man. Well, thanks a lot for this chat, Rick. It's been amazing. Thanks for all your questions, everybody who's been watching. Thanks so much to Justin Kenny for running it, for Austin for helping set it up. Yeah, and I'm sure we'll do this again. Check out Audiotree at audiotree.tv. We have a bunch of cool shit on YouTube. We've got this active Twitch channel. We have an Instagram channel that works well. So yeah, anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll talk to you later. Bye, Rick.
Bye, Blake.